April 22nd, 1915, 4:15 a.m. The outskirts of Langmark, just north of Ypres. A chilling mist hovers barely a yard above the waterlogged ground. A steady, biting wind pushes in the northeast at roughly 9 miles per hour, carrying the frigid air of a spring morning that feels more like the dead of winter. The trenches on both sides, hacked 6 feet deep into the earth, gleam with stagnant water and reek of damp wood cordite and the sour stench of unwashed uniforms. German artillery crews stand ready behind the forward trench line. Their 77mm field guns, capable of launching shells at over 1,600 feet per second, stand silent, awaiting orders. But today, their task is not bombardment. Today, something far more sinister will replace the thunder of high-explosive shells. Hidden beneath tarpaulins, stacked in shallow dugouts, lie long rows of pressurized gas cylinders, each filled with chlorine intended not for industry, but for the battlefield. The crews move with extreme caution, checking valves with meticulous care. Some quietly cross themselves, seeking divine protection. Most remain silent, gripped by the tension of the moment. Across the field, in the French trenches, a thin line manned by Algerian tirailleurs and territorial units. The men observe the unsettling calm. They sense no incoming barrage, no preliminary bombardment. Only the whisper of the breeze through the grass and the occasional crack of a distant rifle disturbs the silence. A sergeant named Morel nervously traces the edges of a small photograph tucked inside his breast pocket. His wife, smiling faintly from a balcony in Lyon, blissfully unaware of the horrors his front will witness within the hour. Morel closes his eyes briefly, fighting to steady his breath. At 4:30 a.m., German officers move along the line, whispering final checks. Masks? None issued. This is not yet the era of gas masks with canisters and filters. They place their faith in the wind and precise timing. Lieutenant Feldheim raises a signal flag. Far behind the line, a whistle pierces the air. The men at the cylinders begin to turn the steel valves. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then a pale yellow cloud seeps in the ground like a low-lying fog, clinging to the earth. The Germans quickly retreat from the front trench, scrambling up ladders to take up reserve positions. The cloud thickens, rolls forward, and spreads along a nearly 4-mile front. The wind does the rest. Across the battlefield, Sergeant Morel frowns. The mist looks wrong. Too dense. Too heavy. It creeps into shell holes, filling them as if it were a living thing. A private beside him coughs once. Then again, the hacking coughs growing more violent as he clutches at his throat. Another soldier shouts for everyone to cover their faces with wet cloths. Someone screams for officers. The cloud keeps coming. Chlorine, heavier than air, sinks into French trenches within minutes. The first wave of men feels the agonizing burn in their eyes. Clear tears stream uncontrollably. Then comes a searing pain in their chests, like swallowing acid. Lungs desperately claw for air that offers no relief. A tirailleur collapses over firing step, gagging, his rifle sliding into the mud. Morel tries to pull him upright, but the man convulses, froth bubbling from his mouth. Back at the German line, Feldheim watches the cloud drift precisely as planned, toward the poorly sealed French positions. He hears scattered rifle shots, the sound of panic rather than battle. He checks his pocket watch. 9 minutes have passed since the release. They had estimated 5 to 8 minutes for the gas to settle. Their calculations, based on the 5-foot depth of the French trenches and the prevailing wind direction, appear grimly accurate. Morel climbs from the trench, the gas tearing at him. The air above ground seems marginally better. He wraps his scarf over his face, knowing it offers little protection. Bodies lie scattered near the parapet, some twitching, some still. A young private pulls a folded, unfinished letter from his coat, a letter never be sent, and drops it as he collapses. Morel grabs the letter instinctively, slipping it into his pocket, as if rescuing a small piece of the man's soul. The French line begins to break. Gaps appear where entire squads fall unconscious. Later casualty estimates will record over 1,500 incapacitated in this sector within the first 10 minutes. Exact figures vary by source. Morel waves for retreat, even though he has no authority to give such an order. Men stumble past him, coughing violently, falling into ditches and tangled wire. At 4:46 a.m., German infantry received the order to advance. No roaring barrage clears the way. Instead, an eerie silence fills the field, broken only by muted coughing and distant cries. The 26th Reserve Corps moves forward cautiously, stepping over abandoned rifles and equipment. Their pace is slow at first. They are unsure how long the gas will remain deadly in low-lying areas. A few soldiers hold rags soaked in water, or even urine over their faces, the only rudimentary protection available. Feldheim grips the ladder, descending into the French front trench. The scene before him is frozen in time. Tools dropped in mid-task. An overturned kettle, still warm. A rosary lying in the mud beside its owner. The gas lingers in pockets, shimmering faintly. He signals his men to avoid the lowest spots. Further south along the line, a group of French soldiers attempts a counteraction. They crank an old 65mm mountain gun, attempting to fire blindly into the cloud. Its rate of fire, around 6 rounds per minute, struggles under frantic efforts of its crew. The shells burst harmlessly in the haze. One crew member collapses at the breach. The others abandon the gun. Morel continues stumbling westward with a handful of survivors. His throat feels shredded. Every breath is like a knife. Behind him, he hears the German advance. Distant boots, low shouts. The metallic clatter of bayonets fix the rifles. The line is gone. The sector has collapsed. By 5:10 a.m., the Germans have pushed nearly 1.25 miles into the gap. It is the deepest penetration on the Western Front since the early war movement in 1914. And yet, they hesitate. Reserves are thin. Commanders worry the gas may drift unpredictably. Some, according to certain accounts, even debate whether to continue without proper masks, fearing they might fall victim to their own weapon. In the east, beyond a row of shattered poplars, a French runner carries a message toward Brigade HQ. His uniform is soaked with tears and mucus. The note he clutches, trembling, warns of un fumigène suffocant, less lignes as debandant. A yellow, suffocating smoke. The lines are breaking. He collapses before reaching his destination. Another soldier retrieves the paper and continues the desperate run. By dawn's full light, the gas begins to thin. Birds tentatively return to branches. But the trenches remain silent except for faint moans. A battlefield that once echoed with artillery now hosts a new silence. Heavier, more terrible. The world has witnessed something new, a weapon that kills without flame, without noise, without warning. The German advance slows, stalled by uncertainty and the vastness of the opening they created. They have never seen a front dissolve like this. Feldheim pauses on a rise, scanning the field with binoculars. Through drifting traces of yellow, he sees abandoned French positions stretching into the distance. The parapets buckled, rifles half buried in mud. He senses victory, but also something else. A line crossed. Behind him, a private finds a small photograph half submerged in a shell hole. A woman on a balcony in Lyon. He wipes the mud from her face. He cannot know it belonged to Sergeant Morel, now somewhere among the retreating survivors, gasping for breath in the distant fields. The private pockets it, unsure why. The battlefield holds its breath again as the clouds disperse. This is only the beginning. The weapon has worked. The front has ruptured. But what comes next, exploitation or hesitation, will determine whether this day becomes a breakthrough or a dire warning. And the world is about to learn the true meaning of gas warfare. April 22nd, 1915, 6:02 a.m., east of Pilcomb Ridge. Thin sunlight filters through the lingering haze. The ground slopes gently downward toward the French rear, a landscape of churned mud, blasted tree stumps, and the skeletal remains of farm walls. A shallow stream, barely a yard across, glitters with a sickly green tint from the residue still drifting from the gas cloud. The wind continues steady from the northeast, though weaker than an hour earlier. German infantry of the 26th and 51st Reserve Divisions push forward in irregular waves. Their rifles, Gore 98s, with an effective range of 550 to 650 yards in combat, remain lowered. They meet almost no resistance. The silence feels unreal. A corporal mutters that it feels like marching into an evacuated village, not a battlefield. But the corpses along the path tell a different story. Some lie twisted in their final spasms, uniforms stained with bile. Others appear frozen mid-motion, hands clutching at their throats. Lieutenant Feldheim walks with a platoon near the left flank. Every few steps he stops to survey the terrain, wary of lingering pockets of gas. Yellowish vapor still clings to bomb craters and low folds in the ground. He orders his men to avoid these spots, skirting around them as best they can. He holds a handkerchief dampened with water over his nose. Primitive, but better than nothing. The men behind him follow, weaving like a column avoiding invisible mines. To the west, the remnants of French defense attempt to regroup. Officers shout conflicting orders. Some direct survivors toward a secondary trench line, roughly 3/4 of a mile back, a hastily dubbed position only 4 feet deep, far short of standard offensive depth. Others try to establish rally points near an abandoned orchard. A wounded terrier, coughing blood, crawls toward them but collapses halfway. Captain Durand lifts him, but the man's chest convulses and he dies moments later. Durand wipes his face and forces himself to press on. At 6:18 a.m., the Germans reach the first cluster artillery pits previously manned by French 75mm field guns. The guns themselves, renowned for their rapid fire rate of up to 15 rounds per minute, sit abandoned. Shell crates lie open. A half-written logbook rests on a wooden crate, noting a planned ranging adjustment for morning. Feldheim picks it up, flips through the pages, then sets it down gently, as if handling a sacred relic. A shout erupts to the south. Contact! German skirmishers drop into cover behind a splintered fence. On the far side of a shallow ridge, about 330 yards away, a knot of French soldiers attempts to form a firing line. Their lapel rifles crack sporadically, bullets flying wide. Many of them still cough violently between shots, their lungs burning with each strained breath. Some can barely shoulder their rifles properly. Feldheim signals a controlled advance. His platoon fans out to the left, moving from tree to tree, ditch to ditch. A German machine gun team sets up an MG-08 on a low embankment. The heavy weapon, capable of firing 500 rounds per minute, begins its methodical, thumping rhythm. The French line wavers immediately. Men fall. Dust explodes around them. A French bugler, barely 20, attempts to sound a retreat, but drops his instrument as a burst of machine gun fire kicks up earth beside him. He scrambles back, eyes wide with terror, clutching a folded letter tied with string. The surviving French pull back toward the orchard. Durand tries to form a rear guard, shouting for 2 squads to hold their position. Only 5 men respond. Exhaustion, fear, and the burning agony in their lungs shatter discipline faster than any artillery barrage. By 6:40 a.m., the Germans continue advancing deeper into the gap, now nearly 2 miles wide. Yet their momentum slows. Communication lines stretch dangerously thin. Runners pant with exhaustion as they shuttle orders between company commanders. One collapses beside Feldheim, gasping for breath. Feldheim kneels, checks his pulse, then covers him with his coat. The war has changed on this field, but death remains the same. Further south, Algerian tirailleurs attempt a desperate flank maneuver. Their captain, Ben Youssef, rallies 30 men around a hedgerow. He orders them to fix bayonets. Their blades glint in the thin sunlight. They intend to strike the exposed German right flank, buying time for reinforcements from a 45th Division moving up from Ypres. But as they begin their charge, a hidden German machine gun nest on a reverse slope opens fire. Within seconds, half the unit falls. Ben Youssef pushes forward, shouting for the rest to follow, but a round strikes his shoulder. He spins, crashes to the ground, and rolls into a ditch. His men drag him back, cursing through tears. Meanwhile, Feldheim's platoon crosses a shallow depression, leading to a farmhouse ruin. They advance slowly, wary of French stragglers. Inside the wrecked structure, they find a small cluster wounded. 2 tirailleurs and a territorial soldier. The territorial man, barely 18, tries to raise his rifle, but drops it from weak fingers. Feldheim hesitates. One of his men moves to bayonet the youth, But Feldheim raises a hand. "Leave them," he orders. "They're no threat." His men exchange uncertain glances, but obey. The battlefield shifts again around 7:05 a.m. Fresh French artillery from the rear finally opens fire. A battery of 75s, positioned nearly 2.5 miles back, begins sending shells screaming overhead. Their familiar shriek cuts through the morning air. The Germans scatter. Shrapnel rains down, shredding tree limbs. The advance falters. Feldheim dives behind a broken cart. A shell slams into the farmhouse ruin, instantly killing one of the wounded soldiers. Dust billows outward, mingling with lingering traces of chlorine. The German command reacts swiftly. They call forward their own supporting guns, 105 millimeters and 150 millimeters howitzers. Within minutes, counter-battery fire arcs overhead. The air becomes a chaotic tapestry of sound. Shells whistling, explosions hammering the ground. Timber snapping, men shouting orders drowned out by the thunderous barrage. This is the second crescendo of the day, the chaotic clash following the gas-induced collapse. Both sides bleed. Both sides struggle for footing on a battlefield that defies all expectations. Feldheim rallies a platoon, guiding them toward a drainage ditch that offers some degree of cover. He counts his men. Several are missing. A faint ringing fills his ears from the near shell burst. He forces himself upright. To the French rear, Captain Durand reaches a secondary line. Only fragments of companies arrive with him. A medical orderly bandages a man blinded by the gas. Another soldier, trembling uncontrollably, clutches a photo of his children. Durand spreads a map on the trench floor, a damp, shallow ditch offering scant protection. The map reveals a line bending dangerously inward, the German advance threatening to split the sector entirely. He grabs a pencil and marks an emergency fallback position. Reinforcements from the 45th Division might arrive by 8 a.m. if the roads remain clear. But the gas has sown chaos and panic. Messengers vanish. Units retreat without orders. The command structure feels like it is desperately trying to patch a sinking ship with their bare hands. At 7:32 a.m., a German flare arcs into the sky, green. It signals that they have reached the third objective ridge. German commander believe they are on the verge of a breakthrough unseen since 1914. Yet uncertainty gnaws at them. The gas is unpredictable. Reserve units lag behind. And the renewed French artillery continues to pound the field. Feldheim observes the ridge ahead. Smoke. Shattered trees. Men running. The shape of the battle is shifting again, approaching a third crescendo. Either a breakthrough or a catastrophic loss of momentum. He wipes gas-induced tears from his eyes. The stench of chlorine still clings to his uniform. The day is far from over, and history is still being written in the mud beneath his boots. 5:42 p.m. south of Steenstraat, Ypres salient. Cloudy sky, light drizzle, wind shifting west. Ground, churned mud, broken duckboards, collapsed trench walls. The wind changes direction again. He notices it first. A faint tug of air brushing across the top of the trench, just enough to flutter a torn field map pinned to a sandbag. The drizzle mingles with the mud, turning the parapet darker, slicker. Men glance up instinctively. They have learned that the sky itself is a weapon now. He hears a lieutenant whisper, "If the wind turns east, they'll try again." No one answers. No one needs to. The memory of the first chlorine wave still clings to them, sharp, greenish, metallic, like an invisible bruise on their minds. They know it can return at any moment. They know masks fail, filters clog, straps snap. The gas always finds a way in. He clutches the crude cloth and gauze mask issued 2 days ago. It's stiff from dried urine, the field expedient method, according to some sources, to neutralize chlorine. It smells acrid, but it saved lives once. Maybe it will again. The trench here is about 7.5 feet deep, reinforced with timber that is now splintering under constant shelling. On average, the artillery density has risen to 18 to 22 shells per minute across the sector. The German batteries fire from behind a low ridge, just far enough to obscure direct spotting. Their 77mm field guns have a range of about 7,500 yards. The British 18-pounders strike back, their shells reaching nearly 9,000 yards, shattering the ground in a counter-rhythm of destruction. But today the bombardment feels different, delayed, measured, wrong. At 5:46 p.m., a shell whistles overhead. It does not explode. It lands with thud on the far edge of the trench. No plume, no shrapnel, just a puff of dust. Gas shell, someone yells. The second one confirms it. Yellow smoke curling low, hugging the mud. Men scramble for their masks. A hand shakes so violently that a strap slips into the wet ground. Someone curses. But he sees something else behind the drifting smoke. Movement. Gray shadows. Dozens. Then hundreds. The Germans are advancing in staggered rows, rifles lowered, bayonets fixed. Their steps are synchronized with whistles blown at precise intervals. Officers point with their canes. Behind them, machine gun teams carry the MG-08, a hefty 120 pounds with its mount, featuring water-cooled barrels capable of firing 450 rounds per minute. Heavy, slow, deadly if properly positioned. The gas shelling intensifies. Small bursts, localized clouds. Not the overwhelming tide of the first attack. This time, it's targeted, tactical, designed to create gaps, sow confusion, and establish choke points. At 5:51 p.m., the lieutenant shouts, "Stand to, hold the line until reinforcements arrive." But reinforcements are a mile and a quarter back, mired in mud that swallows boots up to the ankle. He positions himself at a firing step and peers through the smoke. The chlorine mixes with the drizzle, rolling in uneven pockets. Some clouds dissolve. Others thicken. He steadies his rifle, short magazine Lee Enfield, 10-round magazine, effective out to nearly 900 yards. He fires. The recoil is familiar. A German soldier folds sideways. The Germans break into a trot. Shells explode behind them, but not enough, not fast enough. The first wave of chaos washes over them. Machine guns open fire from the British left flank. 2 Vickers guns hammering at full rate, nearly 500 rounds per minute. Their tracers stitch the battlefield, cutting to the gray waves of advancing Germans. He loads again. Fires. Loads. Fires. He can no longer tell if he's hitting anyone. The smoke is too thick. At 5:57 p.m., a runner collapses into the trench, carrying a message smeared with damp ink. Gas concentration increasing on right sector. Mass priority. As he reads it, he hears coughing, wet, violent. A soldier near him fumbles at his mask, eyes reddened, tears streaming. The gas found a gap between the filter and his cheek. He grabs a man's mask, presses it tight with both hands, forcing the seal. "Breathe slow," he says. The man tries. Fails. Tries again. Another wave of shells lands. This time explosive. Earth erupts. Bodies are thrown into the air. Timber groans. The trench shivers like a living thing. The second surge of chaos begins. A full German assault breaches the forward sap to the right. Shouts. Gunfire at close range. Screams. He sees the German stormtroop-style squads, still rudimentary this early in the war, but emerging. Each team carries specific tools. Grenades, wire cutters, extra ammunition. They move differently. Purposefully. Not a mass, but a coordinated unit. They reach the trench edge. One German throws a grenade, Model 1913, the potato masher. The fuse burns quickly. He tackles a coughing soldier behind a crate as the grenade explodes, sending shards of wood and metal slicing through the air. Someone's hand, only the hand, lands beside his boot. The trench is collapsing in sections. The right flank is bending, nearly breaking. At 6:04 p.m., a whistle blasts. 3 sharp notes. A signal for withdrawal to the secondary line. But another whistle answers from the left, 1 note, long. Stand firm. Confusion rips through the trench. 2 commands. 2 possible futures. He looks to the lieutenant. The man hesitates. Then distant thunder. Fresh artillery. But from the British side. A full battery of 4. 5-inch howitzers unleashes a curtain barrage. 115mm shells pound the enemy at a rate of 6 to 8 rounds per minute. They target the advancing Germans. forcing them to drop and scatter. The third wave of chaos unfolds. The battlefield shifts, not fully in their favor, but enough to allow them to breathe, however shallowly. He sees Germans scrambling back toward their lines, dragging their wounded. Others press forward stubbornly, but lose momentum as shells tear gaps in their formations. The gas thins as the wind shifts slightly southward. The lieutenant finally shouts, "Hold! Hold where you are!" He fires again, inhaling through the damp, bitter mask. The drizzle strengthens, helping to settle the chlorine. Minutes stretch into an eternity. Then silence begins to grow in the cracks of the battle. German whistles fade. Footsteps retreat. The assault dissolves. By 6:27 p.m., the line holds. Barely. Bodies mark the cost. Nearly one-third of the platoon is down. Some coughing blood, others limp, unmoving. He sits in the mud, his chest burning. He removes his mask slowly. The air tastes metallic, but breathable. A soldier beside him unfolds a photo. His daughter. Another writes a half-torn letter, his hands trembling. Later, when the medics finally arrive, they tally the wounded. Chlorine burns lungs, scars throats. Some will never breathe properly again. But strategically, this moment matters. Reports will later conclude that chemical weapons forced armies to rethink everything. Gas masks were redesigned. Training manuals rewritten. Artillery coordination refined. Infantry formations adapted. Mapping of winds and terrain became integral to planning. New technologies would emerge. Early gas sensors, improved filtration systems, counter-battery spotting techniques. New doctrines would follow. Creeping barges, flexible defenses, specialized assault units. The map of Ypres shifts only a few hundred yards today, but the war changes forever. And in the memories of those who survive, the first gas attacks remain a dividing line between the old war and a new, mechanized terror humanity had never faced before.